don't we start off with introducing yourself?
I'm Mark Woodruff, owner of Woody Creative, small marketing agency. We've been here, been doing it for well over a decade. We've been in the Lakeway area for more than a decade. We spend most of our time building websites because when the phone rings, that's mostly what people want. So I always kind of say it's 60 to 70% of what we're doing is building websites. But got a call the other day, are you guys full service? And I kind of hesitated because we've done all that kind of stuff in the small group that we are. Well, to what extent do you want to talk about search engine, or would you want to talk about pay-per-click? Because we can do those things, but we don't spend our day doing it. Mm-hmm. We don't live in the world, and we're not monitoring those algorithms. So we know how to get you there, and we can do the first kind of slice of things, like we're going to set up every website for search engine. But, you really want to dive deep into that? Okay, then we partner with people. So there's a lot of people in our BNI group, for example, that we would partner with that do some of those other services, like video or pay-per-click and things like that.
Cool. What got you into that type of business?
I've been doing it. First website I built, I was working for Shell Chemicals, doing marketing and public relations in the 90s. And I built the first, back then it was, I think, some of the Shell companies didn't have websites. And I was working for Shell Chemicals and they said, can you build us a website? I'm like, I don't know. I've seen some of those things. So I built the first website I ever built was in 1998 for shellchemicals.com. And I think that was the last one, or the only time I really did it when I was working for a company and not doing it either for myself or for some other agency. Mm-hmm. But have always been in a writing or a marketing component. And kind of since then, it's been building websites. So hundreds of websites really since then. Most of them for Woody Creative.
So you've been building websites since kind of
the last millennium.
Since Internet 1.0 versus a lot of the companies out there that have been just doing it in the last 3 to 5 years or something like that from that standpoint.
And it's very different because almost everything we're building now is WordPress. And in the early days, of course, it was kind of straight HTML. We had a client recently who said, who we're building a WordPress site for, but they have an old HTML site. Sure. And in the transition while we're kind of building it, they're like, can you help us make some edits to the HTML site? And part of me thought, but it's like, wow, I really don't want to, I gotta go dig back into that. And it was real old school. Yeah. So, it wasn't fun.
When was the kind of the turn from the HTML to the WordPress?
I think WordPress has been around for, I think it's about a decade. Okay. And we've been doing it for about that long. In fact, I think about, we've been doing almost that long and kind of never looked back. And I remember when we first started doing WordPress sites, there was some of this, it's almost like, the really old days of VHS versus beta and VCR recordings, and there was and everybody said actually beta was better, but whatever happened, I think Sony adopted, or I can't remember how it happened, but somehow VHS won, and then it just took off, and that kind of happened with WordPress and things like Joomla and Drupal, which are still around, but they were all neck and neck, and I think we got lucky, and saying, this one looks pretty good, and it sounds like people are saying good things about it, and it kind of won out.
Became the standard.
Yeah, it kind of won out, and I really would say we got a little bit lucky because we started working all three of those platforms and kind of migrated toward WordPress, and we would eventually ended up there anyway, but.
Yeah, obviously you would have had to at this point, but you were able to adopt it sooner than some.
It's not like we had a vision. We're just like. We were doing all three of them at one point. Now I couldn't tell you what it's like to work on a Drupal site or a Joomla site. Yeah. And I don't like working on HTML sites.
Yeah. So. Well, again, that's a good thing. That's not where the world's going. We're not going back that way. So.
Yeah, I think it's more than a third of the sites now are the world sites. Yeah. And almost all of the new e-commerce sites in particular are WordPress because somebody who's adopting a new site these days is kind of go that direction.
Starts with that. I saw that you graduated from University of Texas. Mm-hmm. Are you a lifelong Texan? Were you born here? What's kind of the backstory from that standpoint?
Yeah, I actually lived in Austin up until I was about 3 years old. Okay. My dad was in law school, and we lived in married student housing. My parents were in married student housing on Lake Austin Boulevard, which is right across the street from a public golf course that's still there.
And the Lions golf course?
I can't remember if that's the name of it, but it's right on the river. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I remember as a kid, golf balls hitting the roof. And my wife always goes, how do you remember stuff that, you moved when you were 3? I'm like, yeah, I remember a lot about that place. Yeah. So I have a lot of visions of that. But lived in Houston most of my career, went to high school in Houston. Right. Only 2 years have lived outside of Texas. We moved to DC for 2 years, and I started a creative agency as part of another technical agency that was already there, and they didn't have a creative group. So I, from Houston, moved to DC to start that group, and it was during that was like during 9/11, oh, wow. And and it was a real lesson about if you don't have a network in that area, you'll know it. Like really? My whole career in Houston and all the relationships that I built when that agency collapsed, we lost a lot of clients. Sure. During 9/11. I couldn't get a job. No. I didn't know anybody. And I remember thinking, I'm real overqualified for a lot of the things I was going and talking to people about. But you could tell, I said, oh, people are hoarding jobs. So when we finally moved back here, it was about 17 years ago, there were a lot of things available. Yeah. Because I knew a lot of people, had a lot of connections.
This is where,
it was a good lesson.
Yeah.
Like how we know each other through our BNI connection. Sure. There's a lot to be said for that, and how those kind of people want to work with people that they know and that they trust.
Even as much as our world has gone digital and social media and stuff like that, where there's a lot of people that you kind of have a network with, but you don't really know. It is still a lot of people in a lot of phases of their life and of e-commerce and jobs and stuff like that. Like who you know is still a very important thing from that standpoint.
Huge, yeah. I think especially in the kind of Lake Travis community, even more so than kind of Austin, or having worked in Houston and seeing what that kind of culture's like, which is different from Austin and very different from this kind of Lake Travis community. Because you've probably seen a lot of people, they want to know that somebody's local, or they want to know that somebody's in the area. And I always kind of call this area Mayberry, a little bit like that. For good and bad, sure, I mean, like they're going to talk. People talk about each other, but so often when the phone rings, they saw us, or somebody in our group, saw us and recommended us, or they saw us online, or they saw us at the bottom of some other local businesses, sure. Website developed by Woody Creative, and they always like, you really are here. You're not in Austin. Sure. That's super important to them. And I like that. Yeah. I think it's a good place to be because of that.
In the real estate world, obviously, we have to be fairly local. You're not going to do that remotely. But I remember even from my days back as a mortgage loan officer, when I could do loans literally throughout the country, a lot of times when people from Austin would get a hold of you, they'd be like, oh, you're here local. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, we could sit down and meet if you'd like to. They're, no, we're okay. I can just do it over the phone or online. But the fact that you were still here local was an important thing for some people from that standpoint. So you're not dealing with a call center or tech support somewhere else from that standpoint. What made you eventually move? So you were in Houston working for Shell. What was kind of the next step for you from there?
It's funny, I worked for enough kind of small digital agencies, like moving to DC. There was one I worked for right before I moved to DC that all kind of collapsed during kind of that .com era, or because there was a whole lot of, I remember there being jokes about, oh, the toilet paper's made of stock options, and they're just handing it out. And I can remember actually a guy I worked with who had invested in some tech companies. He was all excited. He would go online and monitor it, and he'd go, and it was like, it's up to several $100s a share, and then watching it crawl down to pennies, and him kind of laughing about it. And that wasn't that uncommon in that area. So, that was indicative of kind of how things were exploding and nobody knew what was going to happen. Then it all kind of came back down. And I worked for a handful of agencies that, and one of them even was an ad agency where I went on and became like the president of their technical, their website division. And they'd been around for more than 30 years. We're in 5 Texas cities. Wow. And 4 months after, that was how I first came to Austin 17 years ago. Right. And I'm not going to say who it was, but they'd been in 5 cities, just been a part of the Texas community, and everybody knew who they were. And 4 months after I got there, they went under. And I'm like, oh, this keeps happening. And it was kind of I know enough about how to do this kind of stuff, and I've touched all these different areas, especially on the digital side, especially with the website kind of stuff. I'm just going to go do it myself. And that's kind of how Woody Creative was started, was I'm tired of working for other people where I don't have control over it.
Born out of necessity.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be in charge of of who I work for, who I work with, what kind of jobs we're going to take. And you never really completely work for yourself. There's always, some client, but you get good at determining who's great to work with.
You still can say no. We may not be. I mean, not that happens a lot in small business, but you can say no. We may not be the best fit, or no, that this isn't working out. So you do have some control that way. But your focus as a small business owner goes from, as an employee, I'm working for a company, and they're kind of deciding what's going on, to now I'm working for the client or the customer, whoever.
You're always working for somebody. But this morning was a good example. There was a local roofing company, a guy I met with, and he has about 5 or 6 people that work with him, and that's perfect. That guy, and I realized that people get so excited when it's their baby, and I wouldn't really call him mom and pop, but it's a family-owned business because he has several employees, and realizing that just sitting down and talking with him and getting excited and acting, you kind of forget. I think it's a gift that we have, is that we act like it's our business. And it's not all altruistic, because I even told him that it's that, at the end of the day, our name ends up on this stuff. So there's some vanity to this, all right? I mean, it's some of it is, as much as you think it's all about us servicing you and stuff, I'll tell you the truth. It is, and we're going to act like it's our own baby and it's our business, but our name goes on to it. And so it's kind of protecting, in some ways it's almost, don't get in the way too much when we're trying to trust us and how we're going to make it look, that how you tell us what you're about, what your culture's like, and then trust us to get you to that point. But to see him get really excited, and I even told him, like, that's kind of why we're excited about doing this, and why we're not seeking out large business or even big, medium-sized business. Like a company with 20 people is a really good sweet spot, because they're big enough to understand that they need some of these tools, and they usually know what they want. Maybe they have a brand but it needs tweaking. But they get really excited, and the guy was, we haven't even signed a contract, but he already kind of basically said, we're going to do this. I'm excited, and I'm excited that you're here, that you're local. You're the same size as we are, kind of. So
he's excited that you're going to be able to go to bat for him as much as he, because again, it's his baby. Whereas again, when you get to those larger companies, yes, the website's important and stuff, but it's a small component of their whole business.
Care, really. And we probably aren't doing a website for, we'll do work for Dell or something, and we're not working on their website. We'll be working on some campaign or something. But you're dealing with somebody who really doesn't care that much, and they're more worried about making their boss happy. There's not a lot of passion to it. That's not as much fun. I mean,
fitting the budget and the criteria that the company has laid out for, hey, this is how much you can spend, but this is the objectives we want you to complete and stuff. And so you're just kind of fitting it into this box versus having it's Woody creative, so you like to have that creative outlet from that standpoint as well too.
I would say it probably usually pays better, actually, but it's not nearly as much fun.
Fulfilling.
And they don't tend to necessarily stick around forever, whereas if you're building somebody's website, they come back to you, the next month when they need some other landing page, or so they want to do a campaign. Where are we going to send people? Good. Let's talk about what that page should look like, and make a shiny object for where somebody can land in an ad or a social media campaign or something.
Nice. So prior to deciding to start your own business, had you grown up thinking you would become an entrepreneur and have your own business? Was that never really a goal at all?
No, I don't think so. It's funny that that seems like such a big deal when it's sort of, let's open the doors. There were some kids I was talking to at the high school. Tell you about that?
I know you were going to the high school.
Okay, and it's funny how it can be kind of terrifying talking to a bunch of high school students sometimes. And the questions, they're asking all kinds of questions. One of the questions was, how do you feel about abortion? And it's funny because I'm like, why, but I looked at the teacher like, can I answer that? I mean, am I supposed to? I didn't know what to do, but then they were just they were kind of pushing my buttons. And there were some really good questions, but there were some really bad questions. But kind of realizing, at the end of the day, going out and saying it's your thing, well, I mean, there's some paperwork you file, and you create an LLC, and it's really, that's the official stuff. Then it's really about how are you going to get those clients, or
It's not hard to be a business owner.
You open that door.
Yeah, very easy to have, again, the paperwork that says, oh yeah, I own my own business. But as far as it being a successful career is a different story from that standpoint. And so that's, again, similar in the real estate world. Every once in a while I get to talk to people who want to go into real estate, and I'm like, being a real estate agent has very little to do with real estate. Yes, it's important, you need to know it and stuff, but it's not HGTV, go show your friends and family homes, these great homes. It's about, where do I find the actual people who need homes, because most likely your friends and family don't all need homes in the next year. And so it's really about finding the people and then building that trust and cultivating that relationship to have them want to work with you from that standpoint. So it's the concept of being a real estate agent often is very different than the reality of it. And same thing in the business world or the entrepreneurial world. The concept of being my own boss and working whenever I want to and all those kind of things is very different from owning and running a successful company from that standpoint.
Yeah.
What do you feel what's been the biggest surprise or biggest struggle with going the route of owning your own business?
Let's see. I think there's a lot to be said for the challenge of there's only a handful of us, and the pipeline. It's funny, a lot of these same questions kind of came up yesterday talking to the high school students, which was really interesting how it made me, I was telling the teacher, like, oh, it really made me kind of look at, like, when people ask you these questions and you haven't thought about them a lot, it kind of makes you really look inside, like, I don't know, I guess I've never thought about that, but it's kind of lingering on the surface. Well, here's the answer. And I think a lot of it is the idea of the pipeline and keeping there from being these giant spikes and valleys. So if you're a 50-person agency, and actually the agency that I mentioned that I worked for in Austin, well, one of the problems with it was they had a huge nationwide fast food chain that was there probably 40 or 50% of their business. And I think even they knew that that's kind of dangerous. And it went away, like it immediately vanished. And then a couple of other big accounts that were worth 15 or 20%, and it was just pulled the foundation out from under them. So there's that threat, I think, is always the situation with a business that's just a handful of people that you can't, like I told these students, like, we don't want an account or a client that's 30, 40, 50% of our business, and we don't have one. We don't have anybody who's that big. Now, if you could have it and they were there forever and it was a 10-year contract, that's fantastic. But I wouldn't build a business around it unless you knew you had these guarantees, right? Now, the opposite end of that is that when you're managing 60, 70 websites, a lot of them you don't hear from. A lot of them, you're the one reaching out and going, hey, how's it going? Is there, what's going on in your business? Is there something we can do? We haven't talked in a while, but when you're building several, or you have several of those projects going at the same time, having to step into the shoes of each client and each one of their clients or their customers and go, oh, wait a minute, okay, you feel that switch, you feel the need to change gears. Oh, now I'm this roofer or this garage door company or whatever it is, and making sure that you can differentiate between them and really get into the shoes of what your client's trying to accomplish and think like their customers. That's the challenge. Because so what I'm saying is that to keep that pipeline kind of like this and not have some giant thing come in and then go away and there's a big spike. Because you don't have people sitting on a bench somewhere waiting to come in.
Waiting 3 or 4 months, like, oh yeah, when you can get around to it, let's have you do this.
Now there's we got a big thing, and let's fill you in to do that. And I would say that getting people who care and are really talented and who will behave like you behave is always the hardest thing. It's really hard for me to let go of stuff. It's really, there's not a project that I don't lead, but it's really hard for me to carve something out and go, why don't you work for 20 hours on this piece of it, and not kind of stay on those pieces. So now I can't remember what the original question was, but
just some of the challenges with being in business.
People and maintaining a good even pipeline and juggling all the different, getting into the mindset to make sure you're accurately representing the client and the customers that they're trying to reach, you know.
Because the customer for that roofer is a lot different than the customer for the chiropractor.
Much. Yeah. And it's funny, we exhaust people sometimes, and I'll kind of apologize. Like, I know I'm keeping this meeting forever. I said, I'll stay here all day and ask you questions, but I really want to know, you know, like with the roofer, what is different about you, or who are you beating out? Like, what are you, and you could tell that they haven't been asked those questions a lot of times. No. You know, what's special about you guys? In his case, he was kind of like us. He goes, we've been around for a long time. It's a family-owned business. We're really good at this. I asked him things like, have you ever been sued? He's like, nope, 22 years.
Wow.
And in that industry. Mm-hmm. And I do think that kind of says, he goes, if we've ever had a problem, man, we just fix it. You know, we just keep people happy. Which is interesting because he only has 2 Google reviews, and they're both from people he doesn't know. One's a 1-star review and one's a 5-star review. I'm like, all right, we're going to work on that. Like, we got to fix that. You know, reach out to those people. But let's start flooding that with your actual customers. Let's get 50 of those in there real quickly, because you're going to have a 5. You know, get you to 4.9, and then you'll be 5. And why he needs to do that, and he did. You know, it's like, oh, okay. He didn't even know.
Yeah.
So
no, in a lot of cases, again, as a small business owner, whether it's yourself or the people you're helping, you don't know what you don't know half the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this is actually important, and
yeah, he just wants to go do the stuff. Yeah. You know, he didn't want to have to deal even with social media and that kind of stuff. But it's like, well, I mean, we can help you with that. And we can set you up, and we can grease the skids. But you're going to be the one taking the pictures of, like, take a picture of the project, or also take a picture of people's pets, you know, and go, this is Sam the Bulldog. He's on the job with us today. Well, those people are going to be super excited, you know, like, hey, that was my dog, you know, and whether they hire you or not. And that's not a great blog post, sure. But there you go. There's something, you know.
Exactly.
And then be a subject matter expert, because you are one. And people don't want to hear from you twice a week about roofing. But if there's a new product, it's just like when people stand up in our networking group in BNI, and some of them are really good at it. Like Alberto, our CPA guy, is really good at standing up and going, "Hey, there's a new tax law that you get." And people, you know, oh, okay, you know, I don't usually care that much, but like, now you're talking my language, and trying to say, there's a level of that, I think, for roofing. That and it could be about a discount on a new, you know, are you close to considering a new roof, or have you had hail damage or something, or there's some new federal program that can do this, or there's a new, you know,
like the concrete
system.
Roofing products that have become, you know, the concrete shingles, which have become.
You don't want to hear from that guy all the time.
No, but
be our subject matter expert and tap me on the shoulder every now and then, and go, just in case you know, and okay, I'll keep that in mind, and when the next hailstorm comes through, you'll remember that was the guy who seemed to know what he was talking about. Yeah. So,
I assume you guys obviously can work or do websites for people anywhere, but do you feel like most of your clientele are local businesses in the Lake Travis area from that standpoint?
It is, because that's why the phone rings. But there are a handful of clients that we have that we've never met because they're in Missouri or California or something. It's really rare, and it's kind of uncomfortable, you know, that you usually know what they look like. Because you've been dealing with a lot of different photography, and you know, so I kind of feel like, you know, like there's a series of dentists in Missouri that we built some really cool stuff for, and they love us. But and actually they came to town once, and we you know, they missed us. We like, oh, they're going to be at some dental convention. Like, oh, I finally get to know what you look like. But yeah, it's really rare, and we're not really. It's better when you can meet them face to face, and you know. Obviously, I mean, but you kind of lock in these relationships when you have the opportunity to sit down, you know.
So you were kind of saying, so out of all the things you do, what's your favorite from that standpoint of all the services? Is it the building of the websites, or?
In talking to those Lake Travis High School kids, what advice would you give us? And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of pressure, but because it didn't, you know, I thought, I know, I got a piece of advice for you. Make sure that you're excited about something you do, and it sounds like, you know, somebody giving a high school graduation speech and floss your teeth every day kind of a thing, but I really do mean it. That you've probably been in jobs where you went to work and it was, and you woke up kind of like, I can't do this, you know, I don't feel good about this, and I like that. A lot of times, I think almost all the time, it's the people. And I said, here's a good example. When I was in high school, one of my favorite jobs, I was cutting grass for the school district, and we had to be at work like at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was hard. It was during the summer in Houston, but man, I loved it because we just laughed. It was a bunch of guys that, from different high schools around in that area, a couple guys from my high school, but they were just funny, and as hard as it was, we were singing and laughing all day long, and I remember thinking, that was great. I was sorry when that ended, and it was mowing yards, right? So I always watch myself, because I've been in enough situations where I would get up, not be excited about going to do it, that making sure that, or noticing when I wake up being like, oh yeah, like what's today? Oh yeah, I get to spend, I don't have any meetings in the morning, and I get to go dive deep on that one thing. And what ends up being probably is website work, because there's so many different places to go when the client says, here's what we're trying to accomplish, here's what we want to kind of look like. We want to look like those guys. Our customers are this, this, and this. And then going and taking all those things and going, oh, okay, well, what would be the supporting imagery, and what, because we're doing all the design stuff, we're doing all the message too. We're not saying give us your stuff or give us your copy, unless it's your bio, But even then, it's like, well, we don't have one. Well, let me interview you on that. Let's create that. Let's make it, better and make it something that people would be interesting. So it's the advice I gave them is, make sure that if you find, it's always going to be, you're always going to have days that are going to suck, and you're not going to want to go do it. But if you're not really finding joy, it's like you're in the wrong thing. If you're whatever it is, if you're bagging groceries, or stocking shelves or something, and you find yourself just laughing, it's like, that's a pretty good thing, But I've been in enough situations where it was a fear-oriented environment, usually in corporate kind of situations, and everybody was just afraid to make their boss happy. It's like, that's not good. Yeah. So I think it's building the websites. I get real excited about doing logo design too, which is real one-dimensional, because it's not like taking all these different pieces, but it's a real head-down, there's one, got it, put that over here. Let's do another one, try to come up with a sheet where you have like 6 or 7, and you stand back and go, that looks pretty good. Oh, I don't like that one. I don't know, because by the way, if you show your client,
they're going to want the one that you think that.
Yeah, don't put anything in front of a client that you wouldn't be excited if they picked it. Right. And if it means you have to,
because it's going to go on their website, and the bottom of it is going to have your name.
They will always pick the one that you didn't like. Don't tell them what you like, but that was always true when we were doing like photography and or we making a calendar or something, and like we present 10 different images. Let's put those in there. It'll look like there's some more, like we have a lot of other images, and be like, no, they will pick them. They'll pick the bad stuff. Yeah. I guess I'm sounding kind of snobby about that, but you don't want, if your name goes on it, you only show them stuff that you think would look really cool.
For sure. So if I was a business that had been around the area for, say, 5-10 years, had my website, had all those kind of things, what advice would you give to a business like that as far as things that they may need to or should be looking at with their online presence that may need to be updated or that are outdated from that standpoint that might drive more business to their website or to their
Did you say 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, so instead of a brand new business kind of just starting off, but a business, again, maybe somewhat like the roofer, but a business that maybe has an online presence, but again, you mentioned, so you went from HTML, so now things are all WordPress, which makes a big difference as far as the functionality for people, especially when they're using mobile and a lot of different things and stuff that way. So that would obviously be probably a pretty big one, but are there other things that you would recommend to existing businesses like that they should be on the lookout for to keep their stuff fresh?
So lots happened in 10 years, in 5 years even, lots happened. I would say there's a big difference between 5 years and 10 years though. If somebody said, we built a site 5 years ago, sometimes you can go and if you had a good designer and you had a good, it could be a WordPress site, it could be optimized. If they haven't done anything to it, it's trash. Literally, it would be trash. Like it's going to have been, if you're not optimizing or updating plugins and software and themes and things like that, you have to do that. WordPress requires you have to babysit it. It's not hard. You have to watch it and monitor it and make sure that the plugins aren't fighting.
Sure.
And by the way, which is there's a skill to picking. Not the WordPress software is the WordPress platform, right? But picking plugins and themes that are proven and that are hardy and that have support. And it's not a company that's gone, that it's well managed. Because if you don't, you can kind of end up stuck building investing in something that they go away. There's a recipe plugin that a client wanted to add on a new site we're about to launch because it was on our old site. And I'm like, oh, let's go look at that. I said, this plugin hasn't been updated in 6 years. That company's gone. They don't exist. You don't want that plugin. It doesn't work with the latest versions of WordPress even.
Sure.
It kind of did, but that's a big red flag, and it had bad reviews, But I would say even a 10-year-old site probably isn't a WordPress site. But a 5-year-old site, even then, it's probably so much has changed in terms of what's acceptable. Even the huge leaps in WordPress updates, like the latest WordPress platform is called Gutenberg, which wasn't just a sort of minor update. It was a big leap into, you had to learn how to use a new system. It's a new CMS kind of altogether with some of the same things on the side, but it's real block driven, not to get into it, but it's much more stable and in some ways easier, in some ways more simplified. But I would say a lot of it is making sure that things are updated. There's probably a good chance that if it even was 5 years ago, certainly it's not technically updated or they're not optimized for SEO, for search engine, or is it connected to all your social properties? But it's probably using older software.
Sure.
There's a chance it probably. I don't like the sort of. There's a lot of design snobbery around. You could have made something in 2015 that still look really cool today, and designers are, I think, really bad about. Look at that. That looks terrible. Well, your friend did it. Oh, it looks pretty good though. That they'll like it's a dress on a runway, and kind of sit there and be catty about it. And I think there's, I'm snobby about design too, but there's a lot of stuff from 2015 that I think is obviously going to still be relevant in terms of just the look.
Yeah.
But I'm sure for the most part, almost every website's ugly.
Yeah.
I would say, actually. Almost every kind of small business website is ugly. And inevitably somebody will go, hey, check out, I want to do a refresh. Check it out. What do you think? And it'll look pretty good. And I'll go, and I'll tell them, like, I'm shocked. I can't, I expected it was just going to be horrible. The guy's site we're talking to today was pretty bad, pretty horrible. Yeah. And which, by the way, brings up a thing that I always find myself apologizing to a new client. If you're in the design, or if you're we have an interior designer client, well, that's a good example of a site. It needs to look really cool because people instantly go, oh, she's got a good eye. Sure. She gets it, and you can see it in her website. Well, if you're a dentist or a roofer, that shouldn't matter, and it's funny that it still does. And I almost kind of find myself apologizing to the dentist or the roofer or the CPA or the auto mechanic and saying it shouldn't matter for you to look kind of cool, but if you can create something that looks kind of cool, people instantly have this, whether they know it or not, they kind of respect them. Mm-hmm. They say, oh, they get it. They may not say it out loud, but they're like, cool. As opposed to, what did you expect? It was an auto repair shop. Sure. It's not going to be beautiful design. And I use the word intimidate because I need to find a better word, but I say, if you can almost kind of intimidate the person who gets there to go, ooh, I didn't expect that to look so good. Yeah. They're kind of like
they're drawn in.
They're kind of beholden. They're drawn in and they're impressed, and they shouldn't be. It shouldn't matter.
You can have a really great website and not be a good auto repair place.
It can be just a shell that's just hollow,
But
and people can look real pretty on the outside and not really be deep on the inside.
It's still that first impression though that is hard to overcome.
Yeah.
Good or bad.
I know. I was going to say, and lucky us that but I find myself like, I'm sorry it has to be this way, but it shouldn't. But that's the way your customers are going to go there, and they're going to make this judgment based on you, even though you're not in a field that matters. How they shouldn't be judging you, the book from the outside, but they're going to. Yeah. So,
the shingles are the shingles for roofer. There's not a whole lot of design qualities there.
Yeah.
So have you been out in the Lakeway area for the 17 years? When you first moved back, did you move back to the Lakeway area out here? So you've probably obviously seen a lot of growth and stuff. In that
big time.
Crazy from that standpoint. I've been asking everyone to name a favorite restaurant that they like to go to, other than Not that one of the big chain ones isn't good, but like a favorite local restaurant, I guess, for lack of a better word.
That's a good question. There's a couple that come to mind. One is the Santa Cantarina, which is over
the Mexican place just up the road. Yeah.
What's the name of that shopping center?
I don't remember
it's the big
specifically.
U-shaped. It's been here. It's in the heart of
Yep.
the Lakeway, right next to Austin Boats and Motors, which used to be, I think Flores originally was there, because I remember back in the day when you'd walk in and it was half smoking, and thinking, wow, that was really a thing, like, and it hadn't been that long.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, oh, you'd have to, go to the non-smoking side and hope that nobody was going to smoke. I think they do a really cool job of. People say it's sort of inner Mexico. So It's not Tex-Mex at all. It's really interesting. Yeah. They're good. Another Mexican food place, Don Mario, further down, I think it's near Deba and 620. Mm-hmm. They have really good mole. And the Plate restaurant is really good in the Galleria area. I have to think about it. What else is... really good. There's, I keep telling local clients or people, somebody needs to. We're doing this on a couple sites, and I'm trying to remember. Oh, I know. Yeah, but somebody needs to do a really good happy hour. Not necessarily an app, but
Sure, here's the different. Here are the areas that have, or the restaurants that have
what's hot,
specials from different happy hours and stuff. Because
like
there are instances where you're like, oh, I wonder about. Hey, let's go to happy hour, and you're then having to like go to each site and then try to parse through if they have happy hour, what their specials
are, when
are,
it ends. Because some of them will end at 5:30. You got to be kidding, and some will end at 7. You're like, wow, good job. Yeah. And what food menu items are available on happy hour? There's a couple that come to mind. That are, another one was going to jump in and say, and the other one is dog-friendly restaurants. When people are so into their dogs, and sometimes you'll show up and go, like, oh, I guess I can't really do it. And if you could go, oh, I didn't know that, or they have a porch I didn't realize, and it's dog-friendly. What were the happy hour places I was going to mention? That this is a chain, but that Hat Creek does half-price burgers, I think on Tuesdays. Okay. And they have dollar beer on Thursdays, and it's kind of I don't think anybody has dollar beer anywhere.
I remember being able to do dollar beer Thursdays at a club in college.
I know, it sounds very
that's not
like
that
nickel beer night.
It was a while ago. So
yeah, but I mean, who else has any kind of dollar beer? And they're draft beers. Yeah. Or the League, which I guess is local and is moving to
there are a couple
Galleria,
but
has their Monday 2-for-1 burger things. But to have a quick kind of around the community, what day of the week is it, and who's doing what?
Yep.
I think there's an opportunity for somebody to kind of own that. So we're actually going to build that into one client site. A couple of those kind of cool things, because again, it's the people like
to do stuff local, for sure.
Yeah, and you see it. You can't walk around in something you don't want to be seen in, because you're going to see somebody.
Yeah. It is, again, for being a large Austin suburb, it's still very, like I say, very small town. From that standpoint. Cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today, Mark.
You bet.
Great to learn more about your business, and for anybody that's interested, Woody Creative. What's the best way to find you for people that have more interest?
Website, woodycreative.com. Nice. More than anything, that's the easiest place. Which is funny, because I realized, there's about 20 websites that. As much as we'll scold our clients on, why aren't you blogging? And why aren't you putting that content on your website? And none of them ever say, well, you're not doing it. It's like, I know, but I end up keeping the sheet.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly. It's cobbler's children have no shoes. I ended up keeping this sort of dynamic sheet of websites that we built recently. Like, here's 15 real estate websites we've been. Here's 20 e-commerce websites. They're not on our website, and I end up I'll kind of cut and paste them and email. Oh, here, go check these out, because they'll go to our website and they'll see all the stuff we built, but it's several years old.
Sure.
And I just got to buckle down at some point, and we need to get them all on there and make it a better experience. But I guess the phone needs to stop ringing first, or have some quiet period.
Sure,
I actually
sure.
do that a lot of times. It's over holidays.
Yeah.
That
When it's a little bit
when
slower that way.
everybody's really quiet, like, oh, here we go, I can go do some stuff for us.
Nice.
So
Cool. Sounds good.
yeah,
Thanks for taking your time.
you're welcome. Thanks for having me.